deep winter grips the upper Great Lakes. A harsh place to be in winter. Unless you're trying to find wolves.
We did it! That was good.
Then it's the best time to go looking. Capture teams from the U.S. National Park Service and Ontario's Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry are out scouting for wolves to capture them as part of a 3 to 5 year ecosystem restoration effort to move 20 to 30 wolves to a new home on Isle Royale National Park in Michigan. They captured this wolf in a net fired from the chopper.
Yeah, good work, Scott. Good team effort.
Once the wolf is entangled, they run up and sedate it immediately to decrease stress on the animal.
Snoring.
And he's black, a rare color in wolves, an indication that offers genetic diversity, a perfect candidate for relocation. The capture team has a second wolf in sight. He tries to escape across the frozen lake.
This is a big adult male. He's very thin, but he's got a big head on him, big teeth, and my guess is it's one that we had collared earlier that dropped its collar.
He's been living on Ontario's Michipicoten Island, where wolves have wiped out all of the caribou. Not enough food to go around.
Those are big paws. This is a big dog. Yep. And even though he's thin, when this guy puts some beef back on, he'll be quite the moose killer.
It's been a good day. 3 wolves, a black and 2 grays. The wolves are on their way to a veterinary check station in Wawa, Ontario. Here, the captive wolves go in for a wolf checkup to make sure they're healthy before being taken to the wilderness island.
Kevin, can you grab the blanket?
Yep.
Heart and lungs. Vital statistics.
Upper left and lower left.
They get their teeth checked too.
Not bad. Right. Upper canine 25.
25?
Yep.
Wolves are the largest members of the Canidae family, which includes coyotes, foxes, African wild dogs, and jackals. All of them are highly evolved predators. Adult wolves weigh between 80 and 90 pounds. Males are somewhat bigger than females. Wolf legs are a little longer than most canids, which gives them extra speed. They come in black, gray, and white. The black color comes from North American wolves mixing with dogs that came across the Bering Bridge with humans 12 to 14,000 years ago. Black wolves mean different genes, which is good for the Isle Royale gene pool, as wolves with a black coat may have increased capacity for immune response, helping them ward off disease. The wolves of Isle Royale prey on moose, beaver, hare, and whatever else they can catch. They have 42 teeth and jaws that crunch through moose bones with 1,500 pounds per square inch of force. Lions live 10 to 14 years, dogs 10 to 13. Wolves live only 6 to 8 years. Not a long time.
23.
So these wolves need to be in top condition,
I think so.
disease-free and healthy before they join the Isle Royale bunch.
Temperature is 37.9, so he's been pretty stable. we'll measure the wolf's body temperature, and we'll be doing that every 5 to 10 minutes while the wolf is anesthetized. Because when a wolf is anesthetized, it can't regulate its body temperature as well. So we'll be cooling it off or heating it up as we need to.
14.
14.
They also get tested for dog diseases, heartworm, parvo, distemper, canine diseases that wolves get too.
That's it. And now we wait for 8 minutes.
Parvovirus has already impacted the Isle Royale wolves once. The vets are doing everything they can to make sure nothing like that ever happens again.
So what we're seeing here on this test is that blue dot there is the positive control, which means the test has worked. And we're seeing no other positive dots that suggest that he's been in contact or been infected by any of these particular diseases. It's good to go.
The tests are negative. No infections from the past. Now the vets want to protect the wolves against the future, too.
We're giving the wolf vaccinations for common canine diseases like distemper and parvo.
Michelle, can you drop that for a sec?
rabies. Yep.
They get a green ear tag for ID and a GPS collar to help researchers keep track of them in their new home. Because these 2 wolves, and a couple dozen more, are on their way to a new life, in a new world. A world called Isle Royale. Isle Royale is an island. It sits 20 miles off the northwest coastline of Lake Superior, opposite Thunder Bay, Ontario. The story of Isle Royale begins over 1 billion years ago, with 100 or more lava flows from a big volcanic system nearly 1,000 miles long that stretched from about where Kansas is today to southern Michigan, right through the middle of modern Lake Superior. Though Lake Superior didn't exist then, the volcanic system created a basin over time. Cooled lava layers were pushed up along the edges by the clash of continents and the weight of the cooling lava, causing the center to dip, forming a basin with Isle Royale on one edge and the Keweenaw Peninsula on the other. The island itself is held up by tilted lava flows, all stacked on top of each other, with the layers extending almost 2 miles down into the earth. Then, beginning 850,000 years ago, 4 great glaciations covered North America, thousands of feet deep, under great ice sheets. These crunched Isle Royale, bending the hardened lava flows, carving out lakes, creating many smaller islands, and depositing a lot of debris from the glaciers. Finally, the last glaciation retreated from North America about 15,000 years ago, leaving behind the Great Lakes and Isle Royale as we know it today. This process created a unique and isolated ecosystem whose size and distance from the mainland makes it a perfect example of island biogeography. Not too small, not too far, and with a limited number of species, Isle Royale is a laboratory like no other, where the principles of evolution, natural selection, and ecosystem dynamics, like how predator-prey relationships influence the larger ecosystem, can be explored. Native Americans visited here after the great ice sheets retreated several thousand years ago and still celebrate their deep connection to the island. They came for what the island had to offer: rich fisheries, rare plants, and some of the purest copper deposits anywhere on Earth. The Chippewa Nation has always thought of Isle Royale as a sacred place. Today, it's a U.S. national park, which the Park Service rigorously maintains as a wilderness. 45 miles long, 9 miles wide, it's difficult to find a wilder, more isolated place. In 1958, at the invitation of the National Park Service, Purdue professor Durward Allen started the predator-prey study to observe, analyze, and understand the relationship between wolves and moose on the island, and shed light on the importance of predator-prey relationships in ecosystems generally. Importantly, to do it in a place without human influence. Over 6 decades later, the story of the wolves and moose of Isle Royale has taken many twists and turns. Scientists found it was complicated and surprising. A healthy ecosystem consists of all the organisms living in a particular area, as well as all the non-living physical parts of the environment, such as air, soil, water, and sunlight. The non-living parts are called the abiotic factors. Abiotic factors have large effects on living things and often determine which species of plants and animals will survive or not in a given area. Add an extra abiotic factor to the Isle Royale ecosystem because it's an island.
Isle Royale is unique because of its isolation. It's surrounded by the largest surface area freshwater lake in the world. First, it was rock. It was a clashing of continents. It's copper coming up through the seams. But the water formed it and helped give it its character. It gave it its character by glaciers coming down and scraping clean the whole east end of the island, the bare rock, and then dumping a jumble of soil and rock on the western end, which became the hardwood forest, leaving that thin soil for the boreal forest on this end. And it represents kind of a transition between climates.
The weather and climate of North America, of the northern Great Lakes, and Lake Superior itself all shape the ecosystem on Isle Royale. All these influences have created 2 distinct ecozones on the island. The spruce and fir boreal forest, typically found north of Lake Superior, grow near the lake shore where it's colder. The northern hardwood forests, found to the south of Lake Superior, grow on the higher inland areas of Isle Royale, where it's warmer. The plant community in an ecosystem provides food for the animal and bird communities. Though Isle Royale is an island, and the community of life here is restricted, there is still great diversity. A long list of creatures lives in a variety of different habitats. Together, they all make up the web of life on the island. There are many kinds of wetland on the island: lakes, ponds, marshes, swamps, seasonal streams, fish, frogs, toads, turtles, salamanders, snakes, dragonflies live in and around them. Pondweed, water lilies, and other aquatic plants grow. Several kinds of freshwater clam eat up the bottom of dead and decaying plants. Beavers live in them. Moose graze in them. Birds fish in them. Every single species is necessary for the healthy and balanced functioning of Isle Royale wetlands. The numbers of species living across Isle Royale's many habitats is impressive. Over 250 species of bird, waders, swimmers, and divers, including bald eagles, loons, and kingfishers. More than 60 kinds of fish, like the lake trout, walleye, and yellow perch. There are over 20 kinds of mammal, in addition to the moose and wolves. There are muskrats, beavers, otters, mink, marten, 6 kinds of bat. Every single species contributes its part, does its job, plays its role in the health of the Isle Royale ecosystem. And what each species does affects every other species.
My job is to make sure it all clicks together, with the overall objective being restoring predation to the island's ecosystem. When we initiated this project, we only had 2 wolves, and essentially predation was 0. And the reason we want to have predation is we want to have that ecological dynamic exerting its force on the moose population.
The most prolific of all the plant-eating species on the island is the moose. And if there are too many moose, they overgraze the plants and trees they prefer, thereby altering the future of Isle Royale's forests. In the last few years, the wolf population all but disappeared. Abiotic influences, disease, climate, genetics, left only 2 wolves on the island. Wolves don't eat plants, but they eat other animals that eat plants, like moose and beaver. With no wolves to keep down the moose and beaver numbers, their populations ballooned. The moose began to overgraze the island and change the forest. The beaver began to change the waterways on the island, and the natural fluctuations of this ecosystem began to go beyond what has been observed previously. An ecosystem is like a large puzzle with many pieces. Without a naturally fluctuating wolf-moose relationship, a big piece of that puzzle was missing, and the picture was incomplete. The Park Service had a decision to make. Hands off the wilderness of Isle Royale, or act to restore the ecosystem. After looking at and weighing all the options, ultimately, the decision was made to repopulate the island with wolves for the good of the entire ecosystem on Isle Royale.
The landscape was a focal point. What's going on and how it interacts with these predator and prey. We decided on this course because we felt it would help keep resiliency in the system, and the moose are major, like, forest mowers, if you will. They eat a lot of forage every day, and by putting the predator back on the landscape, because we were down to just 2 of them, it makes a huge difference in the type of tree species that will survive, as well as the effects on our streams and lakes.
There was a breeding population of wolves here for almost 70 years. But with the dramatic decline in wolves, the moose population has ballooned to an estimated 2,000 individuals. Beaver lodge numbers are over 500. Both species are changing the landscape and the ecosystem.
The reason we're bringing wolves out is to be that apex predator, and the reason we want an apex predator in the ecosystem is that we want to have all the pieces. And the apex predator is just one piece. You know, the herbivore, although it chews on the plant community and can in high numbers damage it, they also serve their purpose. And so when we think about the whole, it's important to have every piece contributing in its own way. And so apex predator being one of them. The park is here to protect all its resources, not just wolves, not just moose. We're here for everything, and so we want to make sure the forest can continue on as it should. The reason we're bringing wolves out is to be that apex predator, and the reason we want an apex predator in the ecosystem is that we want to have all the pieces. And the apex predator is just one piece. You know, the herbivore, although it chews on the plant community and can in high numbers damage it, they also serve their purpose. And so when we think about the whole, it's important to have every piece contributing in its own way. And so apex predator being one of them. The park is here to protect all its resources, not just wolves, not just moose. We're here for everything, and so we want to make sure the forest can continue on as it should.
The plan is to restore the presence of wolves on Isle Royale, and thereby restore the ecosystem. In the absence of wolves, moose could overgraze the plant community and change it, affecting other animals that rely on it too. Eventually, the moose may eat all the food, run out, and begin to starve. Many animals get the energy they need to live from plants, Plants, like trees, use energy from the sun to grow. Plant eaters, herbivores, get that energy by eating the plants. Moose are the big plant eaters on Isle Royale. They get their energy from eating balsam fir in the winter, and deciduous trees like birch and aspen and other trees and plants. When wolves hunt, kill, and eat a moose, they, in turn, get the energy the moose took from the trees. This is an example of a food chain. All three links in the chain, plants, plant eaters, predators, affect each other. When there are many wolves preying on moose, there are fewer moose, and the trees are free to grow. But fewer moose mean the wolves begin to starve, and wolf numbers drop. Later, when there are few wolves, more and more moose survive until there are so many that they strip the trees. When more moose survive, more of them grow old. Then hunting becomes easier, and the wolf packs grow larger. They eat more moose, and the cycle repeats over and over. Except in the case of Isle Royale. There are no wolves on the island to multiply and continue the cycle. So the Park Service decided to step in and restore the wolves.
Boy or girl? Move away.
Over the next few years, the U.S. National Park Service and its collaborators intend to capture males and females and move them out to Isle Royale to grow the population and refresh the gene pool.
What's that?
He's thin.
He's thin, yeah, but I thought he'd be really thin.
So far, 19 of 30 wolves have been relocated to the island.
No, it should be fine. Should be fine. There you go. We're gonna go.
Right now, and for the last several decades, we've been trying to understand the significance of wolves in this ecosystem. How do they affect moose populations, beaver populations, and indirectly the effect on the forest itself. And that's still our major overall goal. The scientific challenge now, when the wolf population has been restarted, is whether you can restart the system and see the same thing unfold that we have been looking at for 50 years.
Rolf Peterson is a wildlife biologist who, for the past 50 years of his career, has made Isle Royale his central focus. For him, the relationship between wolf and moose on the island is the important one to watch.
So we have about 20,000 bones collected from moose over the last 60 years. And so we've got a record of Isle Royale produced moose that stretches back to World War II. So we collect these moose bones to keep track of the moose population health and body size over decades. And wolves provide most of these bones for us. We have special teams of volunteers that go through the woods for a week at a time in the summertime looking for bones also, in addition to the ones we find in the wintertime. And then we also collect a metatarsal bone, which is the lowest leg bone in a moose's rear leg, because this is sensitive to early nutrition. So it's about half grown when a moose is born, and it's a reflection of the health of the mother. The mother of the calf really determines how well off her calf is nutritionally and how big it is when it's born. And that turns out to have a lifelong effect on the lifespan of that moose and the susceptibility to arthritis. Yeah, a lot of the health challenges of moose, old moose, are similar to those of people.
The park has also reached out to universities to expand the ecosystem studies. Park Service and student crews from the State University of New York's College of Environmental Sciences and Forestry review collar data for clusters of wolf activity, and then hit the field to search for and evaluate what drew the wolf to the site.
We got a moose bed.
Was it a predation event, a wolf resting site, or scavenging?
Little pieces of wolf hair in this bed. Probably some from the undercoat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
As we all know, over long term, wolves typically form what we refer to as packs. Yet here we have an introduction effort where wolves have come from a number of different locations that have been put on this landscape that they're unfamiliar with. So one thing we're very interested in is social organization of the wolves in this introduction. Who will they interact with? Who will they avoid? Who will they actually join together with to form associations and ultimately packs? And where will those packs occur on the landscape?
The wolves may be the stars of Isle Royale, but the moose play a strong supporting role, so they're getting collars too. So scientists can keep track of the moose as well as the wolves. Seth Moore, biologist for the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, assists with moose capture and collaring as part of a long-term study to compare moose populations and health between Isle Royale and the mainland.
We're just looking at her age. She's a middle-aged animal.
On mainland Minnesota, moose are struggling to survive. Moose are more fragile than wolves when captured and handled. So, gathering vital statistics, taking blood, and other data has to be done quickly to avoid a buildup of stress in the animals. In some ways, Isle Royale is a safer place for moose than the mainland. Many of the parasites on the mainland, like the brainworm found in white-tailed deer, don't exist on the island. Generally, moose of Isle Royale live 9 to 10 years, which is longer than the wolves. They mate in the fall and give birth to 1 or 2 calves in late May the following year. Most calves die in their first year of life. Predators are often the cause. The Ojibwe name for moose is moose. The Algonquin word musu means he strips off, which is what moose do to the trees and bushes they eat. In about 1600, European colonists began to use the word moose. A full-grown bull moose is a formidable animal. It can weigh up to 1,500 pounds and stand almost 7 feet high at the shoulder. The antlers can reach almost 6 feet across. Only a pack of determined wolves could possibly bring down a bull moose in its prime, which is why they focus on the older, weaker animals and newborn calves. But with so few wolves left on the island, more moose calves are surviving, and eventually, there could be too many for the available food. Lynette Potvin is an ecologist at Isle Royale National Park. Her specialty? The connection between the plant community on the island and the moose.
The moose population is basically going to eat themselves out of house and home, and they won't have any sort of forage availability.
That's bad for the moose and other island creatures.
So we have marten that use large deciduous trees for habitat. Snowshoe hare also browse on all of the same species that the moose do, but in lower densities. We have beavers, which are dependent on aspen for building their dams. And so when we have these high populations of different herbivores, it basically changes the entire way that the ecosystem functions. What we're expecting to see is a cascading effect of wolves regulating the population of moose, and in turn, the moose will be more limited in their browse across the island. So we'll see more balsam fir on the west end, and on the east end, we'll see more recruitment of aspen, one of the important species on the other side of the island, and sugar maples.
In short, more biodiversity.
What we're expecting to see is a cascading effect of wolves regulating the population of moose, and in turn, the moose will be more limited in their browse across the island. So we'll see more balsam fir on the west end, and on the east end, we'll see more recruitment of aspen, one of the important species on the other side of the island, and sugar maples.
In short, more biodiversity. The wolf and the moose is a great example. Returning the wolves to Isle Royale will limit the number of moose and protect more of the plants they eat. That'll help the many species that also depend on those plants. The wolf needs the moose, and the moose needs the wolf for the ecosystem to function. Biodiversity gives ecosystems their strength and resilience in the face of change. And things are changing on Isle Royale. The island is 20 miles offshore. The question often gets asked, how did wolves and moose get here in the first place? No one is sure about the moose. Moose are excellent swimmers, but 20 miles is a long way, even for them. Maybe a hunt club introduced them early in the 20th century. The truth is, we don't know how the moose got to Isle Royale. How the wolves got here is easier to understand. It's now clear they came over in the winter on the ice bridge.
Wolves are comfortable on ice, even thin ice, so that's been their major way to get back and forth.
The isolation of the island effect, began to take a toll on the health of the remaining wolves. Then came a warming climate. The atmosphere of the Earth is warming, which in turn is forcing the climate to shift and behave differently. As the climate changes, plants and animals everywhere are forced to adjust where they live and what they eat. It's happening in the Great Lakes and on Isle Royale too. Warming on Isle Royale has been slower because of the cold lake all around it. Still, the prediction is that by 2050, the island could see an average warming of 3 to 6 degrees Fahrenheit.
We're bound to see really stark contrasts here in the next 30 to 50 years, partially because half of the island is in the boreal range and then half is in the temperate range. So we're right on the southern extent of that boreal region. So we, on our eastern end, have a good component of spruce and fir and aspen and a lot of species that are only known to be in the boreal system. So as climate warms, we'll expect to see reduced survival or success of those species.
The island is an ecotone. That is, it's on the edge between two major forest types, the boreal, which likes it colder, and the temperate hardwood, which likes it warmer. Any change in climate will change the island's forests in important ways. Trees and plants will move, change, adapt. Some may go away. The animals that depend on them for food will have to adapt, leave, or die out. Moose are built for the cold. If Isle Royale becomes warmer, it'll be hard on them. Warmer seasons could mean more parasites, like ticks. As the island warms up, the plants the moose eat will become more scarce. Some may disappear. When that happens, the moose will begin to starve. Warming will bring another big change. Between 1950 and 1995, ice cover on Lake Superior lasted 77 to 115 days, depending on the winter. By 2050, that number will be more like 12 to 47 days. That will be a problem for the wolves. The disappearing ice bridge between the mainland and the island has already taken a toll on the wolves.
And eventually the island effect was accentuated by the disappearing ice between the island and the mainland, which had allowed wolves to come over periodically and bring in new genes. We think that is the reason why the population kept going for 70 years.
Winter ice bridges are important to the genetic refreshment of the wolf population. But as winters warm, the ice bridges become less reliable. So today, the new bridge to Isle Royale is by air and boat, and these mainland wolves are the founders of a whole new population on Isle Royale. To monitor their behavior, researchers must rely on data from satellite collars that track their movement. The latest collars let researchers track where the wolves go, which ones stay together, the territory they establish, and how well they're doing as predators. Field scientists with the Park Service are watching the movements of the wolves. Once a day, the GPS collars transmit their locations. As the days and weeks go by, the dots on the map show movement, but is there a pattern? Is a cluster of dots a new pack forming? Is this single dot that hasn't moved a denning female? What the teams are looking for now is the formation of at least one wolf pack, which will indicate a mating pair and any possible sign of newborn pups. But the collars can only reveal so much. To truly understand what's happening, researchers must gather more tangible evidence from the field.
We've had some issues with some of the GPS collars that have been put on these wolves. Some of them have been failing prematurely. And so we have a camera array currently deployed across the island, and we're reviewing those images to look at wolves that trigger the cameras, and we're looking for evidence of pups. We're also going to potential den sites, rendezvous sites, and looking for evidence, particularly scats that may be there, to determine, first of all, if they are wolves, and then if the quality is high enough, individual identification of those scats, so we can get a minimum number of wolves, pups in this case, that may have been born to a particular female.
The park has deployed over 150 cameras, hoping to capture images of any pups born on the island. Their first success emerged early in 2020, when researchers returned to recover footage captured during the fall and winter of 2019.
When we came back this spring, we picked up an image showing definitely 2 pups from last September that would have been born to the female translocated to Isle Royale. So she was translocated pregnant. She successfully found a place to den and reared pups, and they survived through to the winter. Oh, it's great news, because it's important that the population contain individuals of all ages, so that when these yearlings grow up, they'll hopefully disperse from their territory and intermingle with other wolves.
That's not all they found that spring. GPS collar data indicated that another female denned up on the southwest side of the island in April, most likely to give birth to pups that were actually conceived here. Once she left the den site, the team recovered 18 pup-sized scats, a great indication new pups may have been born. And then, as they combed through more remote camera clips, they uncovered these grainy images taken at night of what appears to be another new pup on the northeastern side of the island.
That was a little bit of a surprise, because we ended up running through our camera array and picking up the photo of that pup. And we don't know who that pup belongs to yet. We'll need to get some genetic evidence or further pictures of this pup with an adult, but it definitely confirms that we've had reproduction at both ends of the island, which means we have roughly 2 packs. We just can't assign that pup to parents yet.
It'll take more field research to confirm exactly how many pups have been born and how many have survived. But these initial discoveries are a major step in the right direction.
I mean, having reproduction at 2 different ends of the island, suggesting there are at least 2 packs, we're well on our way to meeting the goals of the project, which is, 3 to 4 packs, having reproduction on an annual basis, killing moose, killing beavers, doing everything that wolves do. I mean, that's what we want, and we want to see it, and we're super pleased about having this information. It'd be great if we had more, but we'll take it.
The hesitancy of this yearling wolf approaching the cold waters of Isle Royale on the trail of a moose is a reflection of the tenacity and the needs of wolves. A single experienced wolf can take down an adult moose, but not without serious risk of injury. The future of any pups will depend on whether they can find a mate and a social structure that allows them to flourish in this isolated ecosystem.
So it's mainly for wolves the challenge of finding a vulnerable moose, and that may take them days of hunting. Right now, with the moose population real high, lots of calves, lots of yearlings, and an aging bunch of adults, it should be fairly easy for the next few years.
Studying the impacts of these wolves on an ecosystem under stress from climate change gives humans insight into changes we can only imagine at this time.
Isle Royale is a very unique environment to work in, and it's really tough to fully understand some of the stories that are here. We still don't know how this story is going to end.